Hello, everyone. Welcome back to all my listeners. This is episode 9 in season 16. Today is Wednesday, October 29th, 2025. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys. So I hope you've had a really wonderful and flourishing month of October. This is the last Wednesday of the month, and I can't believe fall is almost over. The World Series is going on. Pretty exciting. I'm not a big baseball fan, but when it's tight like this, every single World Series, it seems like it's pretty epic. So I'm loving that as well. But anyways, you guys, just wanted to let you know that I had a fantastic telehealth playbook, 25 through 2026, with my good friend Keisha Wilson. And Dr. Michelle Griffith made a keynote appearance. She was remarkable. Hearing a practicing physician talk about telemedicine globally was incredible. So I really, really loved it. And we are going to be putting that on demand as well, at least for the next few weeks until more change happens, right? Because what we do know in healthcare is change is always happening. But anyways, you guys, I am going to get started. So it's the last Wednesday of the month, and it's going to feature my Newsworthy fraud, waste, and abuse highlights for this entire month of October. And guess what? It was a relatively short news cycle for the month of October because don't forget the government shut down on October 1st. So I did make note that there were very few cases for the month of October. But I will shine my spotlight on those that I find newsworthy. And of course, I'm going to spotlight some of those from the month's criminal and civil enforcement cases. Now, in my trusty tip, the very last trusty tip this month, let me just talk about breast cancer awareness one last time, and I will give you my bonus, so a second bonus, and I'm going to talk about diagnosis coding for family history of breast cancer. And one additional bonus. So tune in to the whole episode so you get that second bonus as well. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with another remarkable quote on resilience by Maya Angelou. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So in today's Newsworthy, the month's fraud, waste, and abuse cases. The month of October saw 16 cases as of the recording of this episode. Let's check out some of those that I want in the spotlight. Early October saw Bethel, psychologist, charged with Medicaid fraud. A 76-year-old man was arraigned on 4 counts of felony Medicaid fraud. The charges brought against him by the Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud and Residential Abuse Unit, or the MFRAU, stem from an investigation into his work as a licensed psychologist. The investigation conducted by the MFRAU and the Secretary of State's Office of Professional Regulation began after a referral was received from the Department of Vermont Health Access due to concerns with this man's overall therapeutic and billing practices. Now, the investigation found that he had submitted claims for payment to Vermont Medicaid for psychotherapy sessions he had not provided, defrauding Vermont Medicaid of over $600,000 in public health care funds. He also failed to maintain patient records as agreed in his Medicaid provider agreement and as required by state law and federal law. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment yesterday in Vermont Superior Court, Windsor Criminal Division. Now, the judge ordered him to be released on his own recognizance on the condition that he present himself to the Vermont State Police for fingerprinting within 7 days. The Attorney General's office emphasizes that individuals charged with a crime are legally presumed innocent until their guilt is proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. Early October saw AG Sunday. Philadelphia pharmacy pleads guilty, will pay $2.3 million in restitution for Medicaid fraud scheme involving unregulated HIV meds. AG Sunday announced that a Philadelphia pharmacy will pay more than $2 million in restitution after pleading guilty to felony Medicaid fraud and theft charges related to the dispensing of unregulated HIV medications. The Office of Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud Section charged the company earlier in the year for its role in a multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud the Medicaid and Medicare programs through reimbursements of HIV medications. The investigation revealed that HIV medications, an estimated 100,000 tablets, dispensed from the pharmacy were not from legitimate wholesale suppliers. Now, the AG is quoting here, quote, "The distribution of life-saving medications is appropriately strictly regulated. This company put profits over their patients and broke the law to ignore those regulations for their own benefit. I commend our Medicaid fraud control section and our partners with the Department of Health and Services for a meticulous investigation that led to the stoppage of these unregulated sales and the recovery of millions of dollars that will benefit underserved citizens," end quote. Now, the Office of Attorney General jointly investigated this case with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Inspector General. Now, the investigation found no evidence of individuals who experienced physical harm or illness due to these dispensed medications. The group's owner and pharmacist, as part of the plea resolution, is prohibited from being a Medicaid and Medicare provider for at least 5 years, and his pharmacist license will be suspended for that same time period. The man's 6 other pharmacies in the area have since closed. Agents interviewed pharmacy employees, and they said that the owner was acquiring expensive HIV medications from a source other than one of legitimate wholesale drug suppliers and putting them on a shelf to be dispensed to patients. The employees described the bottles as sticky to the touch, as if the labels had been removed from the bottles. October also saw 3 charged with Medicaid fraud in alleged transportation scheme. Here, a 51-year-old woman was arraigned for allegedly exploiting a Medicaid transportation program. She has been charged with 10 counts of Medicaid fraud, false claim, each a 4-year felony. 2 other women were also arraigned for allegedly defrauding the same program. They each face 5 counts of Medicaid fraud, false claim. The Michigan Medicaid program will provide mileage reimbursement to enrolled beneficiaries when they travel to eligible medical appointments. In some cases, a smartphone app is made available to track mileage to these appointments using the built-in GPS of the phone. When a trip is complete, the reimbursement payment is added to a payment card mailed to the beneficiary when they register for this program. The card can then be used like any debit card. It is alleged that these defendants participated in a scheme where another app was used to effectively trick a phone into thinking it was someplace it was not and submitted reimbursement requests for trips that never took place. This matter was referred to the Department of Attorney General by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. All 3 women were granted a $50,000 personal recognizance bond, and they are scheduled to be due in court. For all criminal proceedings, a criminal charge is merely an allegation. The defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Now, October also saw 8 Medicaid providers indicted, accused of phantom billing. Ohio Attorney General Yost continues to bust Medicaid providers who bill fraudulently, highlighted by recent indictments accusing 7 people and 1 business of submitting claims for made-up services. The Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, an arm of Yost's office, investigated the cases and secured the indictments in a Franklin County Common Pleas court. The cases include 2 people who billed for in-home services when clients were incarcerated, a home health aide who engaged in a kickback scheme, and a provider who admitted to submitting false claims using her husband's name. Now, Yost is quoting here, quote, "If you sneak extra Medicaid dollars like Halloween candy, don't be surprised when the consequences leave a bitter taste. Save your tricks for trick-or-treat night," end quote. Now, among those indicted, the first woman is accused of billing for services when she was traveling or working another job and when a recipient did not live at the address listed on claims. She also admitted to submitting fraudulent timesheets using her husband's name. Investigators calculated a $27,465 loss to the Ohio Medicaid program. Now, the second woman allegedly submitted timesheets for home health services while the recipient was on vacation. leading to a $1,593 loss for Medicaid. The client told investigators that she confronted her after the trip to demand that she sign the fraudulent timesheets. Now, a third woman was charged after investigators determined that she participated in a kickback scheme and received $2,613 that she was not owed. And the fourth woman was indicted on one count of Medicaid fraud. From May 2024 through April 2025, she allegedly billed for in-home services while recipients were receiving care from family members or participating in programming outside the home. Investigators calculated a $34,028 loss to Medicaid. A fifth man and his defunct business were each indicted in a case involving $17,727 loss to Medicaid. The defunct business paused its adult daycare services in late 2022 for a planned relocation. Although it never resumed operations at the new address, the business allegedly continued to bill Medicaid for services. Now, the sixth woman allegedly billed for in-home services while the client was in jail, representing a $2,403 loss to Medicaid. And finally, the seventh woman discontinued services for a client in May 2024, but allegedly continued to bill Medicaid for another month. An investigation also found that she billed for services when she was traveling in Florida or working in a different job when a client was incarcerated. One of her first statements to investigators was, quote, "So, do you know when my court date is going to be?" End quote. In total, $14,580 was fraudulently billed to Medicaid. Indictments are criminal allegations. These defendants are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So, I've been shining my pink spotlight this entire month of October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So in my final episode this month, I wanted to shine my spotlight on diagnosis coding for breast cancer. What do we do? So when it comes to breast cancer coding, there is a lot to consider when someone in the family has breast cancer. So ICD-10-CM guidelines and code set instructs us to use the ICD-10-CM code Z80.3 for family history of malignant breast cancer, in addition to the primary reason for an encounter, such as screening or counseling. Now, this code is used to support the family history of a malignant neoplasm in first or second degree relatives. So ensure that the documentation specifies the degree of relationship to the affected family member and, if possible, the age of their diagnosis. This would help to better support the use of the Z code and helps determine the patient's risk level. Now, I also wanted to throw in another bonus tip today. What about current breast cancer versus personal history of breast cancer? Well, there happens to be a guideline for that in our ICD-10-CM guidelines in Chapter 2 for neoplasms, Section M, where it states, quote, current malignancy versus personal history of malignancy. When a primary malignancy has been excised, but further treatment, such as an additional surgery for the malignancy, radiation therapy, or chemotherapy is directed to that site, the primary malignancy code should be used until treatment is completed. When a primary malignancy has been previously excised or eradicated from its site, there is no further treatment of the malignancy directed to that site, and there is no evidence of any existing primary malignancy at that site. A code then from category Z85 for personal history of malignant neoplasm should be used to indicate the former site of the malignancy. Now, it goes on and says that codes from subcategories Z85.0 through Z85.85 should only be assigned for the former site of a primary malignancy, not the site of a secondary malignancy. Code Z85.89 may be assigned for the former sites of either a primary or secondary malignancy, end quote. So it's important that clear, concise clinical documentation is necessary to select the appropriate diagnosis code. And finally, I focus season 16 Spark on resilience. I want this 16th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone whose words provide us with their insights on resilience. So in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Maya Angelou. Nothing can dim the light that shines within. So very true, right? What more is there to say after such a profound quote? Your story is filled with struggles and success, and it's your story that inspires in ways you do not even know. The light within will carry on. I'm happy Maya Angelou's spark still burns brightly and still inspires so very many. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's short and sweet episode. And I wanted to wish you all an incredible and very, very happy week ahead. Look forward to catching up with you guys in the month of November. Thank you all so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.